The broken law. The wind moved slowly through the tall grass of the savannah, whispering like a warning. At the edge of the land stood Zangoma village, old and rooted in the earth like the baobab trees that watched over it. The huts were round, built from clay and straw, glowing softly under the red light of the setting sun. Smoke rose from cooking fires, carrying the smell of millet and roasted meat. Drums rested quietly near the elders' fire, waiting for night. This village lived by ancient laws, laws older than the oldest elder, laws given by the ancestors themselves. And one law stood above all others. No man must ever enter the sacred forest alone after sunset. The forest lay beyond the riverlands, dark and thick, where the trees grew so close that light struggled to pass through. The people believed spirits lived there, ancient African spirits who watched, listened, and judged. Hunters avoided it. Children feared it. Even warriors spoke of it only in low voices. But Kalo, son of a respected hunter, did not fear it. Kalo was young, strong, and proud. His spear arm was fast, and his footsteps were silent. He believed skill was stronger than spirit, and courage louder than old warnings. Many admired him, but the elders watched him with worried eyes. That evening, the sky turned deep orange, then purple. The sun sank behind the mountains, and the first stars appeared. Women called their children home. Fires were lit. The village gathered as Elder Mbala, bent with age but sharp in voice, struck the ground with his staff. "The night listens," he warned. "The spirits walk." Kalo stood at the edge of the crowd, his jaw tight. He had heard the warning many times. Tonight, it felt heavier. Earlier that day, his traps near the forest edge had been broken. A great animal had escaped. Hunger would come if meat was not brought. When the drums began their slow rhythm, Kalo made his choice. He took his spear. Without a word to anyone, he crossed the river as the moon rose. The water was cold, biting his ankles like fingers trying to pull him back. Frogs stopped singing. Crickets fell silent. The forest stood before him, breathing. Kalo stepped inside. The air changed at once. Thick, heavy. The smell of wet earth and old leaves filled his nose. The trees groaned softly as the wind passed through them. Somewhere far away, something howled, low and long. Still, Kalo walked deeper. Leaves cracked under his feet. His torch flickered, casting twisted shadows that danced along the trunks. He felt watched, though he saw nothing. His heart beat faster, but he pushed on. Then he heard it. A whisper. Not wind, not animal. A voice that spoke without sound. Kalo froze. The torch flared suddenly, then dimmed. The forest seemed to lean closer. His chest tightened, but pride held his legs firm. "I fear nothing," he muttered. The ground beneath him trembled, just slightly. The whisper returned, closer now, curling around his ears like smoke. Far back in the village, a dog began to howl. Elder Mbala lifted his head, eyes wide. He felt it. The elders felt it. The ancestors had stirred. Kalo had broken the tribal law. And the spirits had noticed. Whispers of the ancestors. The forest closed behind Kalo like a mouth swallowing sound. The torch in his hand burned weaker now, its flame shaking as if afraid. He stood still, listening. His breath felt loud in his ears. The whisper returned, no longer distant, but moving, circling him. His skin prickled. Kalo tightened his grip on the spear. He had faced lions and wild bulls. He had stood his ground against raiders. Yet this fear was different. It had no shape, no teeth, no blood. "Show yourself," he said, his voice firm but thin. The forest answered with silence. Then the drums began. Not village drums. These were slow, deep, and hollow, beating from beneath the earth itself. Boom, boom, boom. Each strike matched Callow's heart. The ground vibrated under his feet. Leaves shook. A cold wind slid through the trees, carrying a smell of ash and old rain. Callow took a step back. A shadow moved between the trunks. Tall. Too tall. It did not walk. It glided. His torch flickered again, and for a heartbeat, he saw shapes carved into the trees, faces with empty eyes, mouths open in endless cries. He spun around. The path he had taken was gone. Branches twisted where the trail should have been. Vines hung like ropes, swaying though there was no wind. Panic scratched at his chest, but he forced it down. Running would show weakness. That was what his father had taught him. He moved forward instead. As he walked, memories rose uninvited. His mother singing by firelight. His father sharpening a spear, warning him about pride. Elder Mbala's voice, heavy with age. The spirits do not forgive arrogance. The drums grew louder. Suddenly, the forest opened into a clearing. Moonlight spilled down like silver water. At the center stood an ancient stone circle, cracked and covered in moss. Bones, old and white, rested at its edges. Animal bones, human bones. Callow stopped breathing. He knew this place. Every child knew the stories. This was the Circle of Judgment, where the ancestors once spoke directly to the living. It was forbidden, forgotten, or so the people believed. The drums stopped. The silence pressed hard. Then the air shimmered. From the shadows rose figures made of smoke and light. Their bodies shifted like mist, but their eyes burned bright gold. They wore crowns of feathers, horns, and bone. Some carried spears of fire. Others held staffs carved with symbols older than language. The ancient spirits. Callow fell to one knee without knowing why. His spear slipped from his hand and struck the stone with a sharp clang that echoed too long. A voice spoke, deep and layered, many voices speaking as one. You were warned. The words did not enter his ears. They entered his bones. I came to hunt, Callow said quickly. My village needs meat. I meant no disrespect. Another spirit drifted closer. This one wore the face of an old woman, her eyes full of sadness. Need does not break law, she said. Pride does. Callow's throat burned. I am not proud. I am brave. A low, rumbling sound rolled through the clearing. Not laughter. Something colder. Bravery listens, the spirits replied. Arrogance ignores. The ground split open slightly, and a cold blue light rose from the crack. Callow felt its pull, like the river during flood season. He tried to stand, but his legs shook. Far away, in Zangoma village, the elders had gathered. No insects sang. The fire burned low, and the night felt wrong. No wind touched the huts. Queen Nayira, ruler of the land, stepped forward, her face hard with worry. The spirits are awake, she said, and they are angry. Elder Mbala nodded slowly. The boy crossed the line meant for no man. Back in the forest, the spirits circled Callow. You will not die tonight, the many-voiced spirit said. Death is too easy. Callow looked up, eyes wide. Then what will happen to me? The spirits raised their hands. The moon darkened, as if covered by shadow. The drums began again, faster now, louder. You will carry the mark of your choice, they said. You will walk between worlds.
A burning pain exploded across Kalo's chest. He screamed as symbols carved themselves into his skin, glowing white-hot. The forest roared. Wind screamed. Trees bent low. Then everything went black. When Kalo opened his eyes, the sun was rising. He lay at the edge of the forest, near the river. Birds sang softly, unaware of what had passed. His chest burned. The symbols were still there, dark and alive, pulsing slowly. He was alive, but he was no longer the same. And the spirits were not finished with him.
The mark between worlds. Kalo pushed himself up from the cold ground. Morning mist floated above the river like pale spirits returning to sleep. The sun climbed slowly, painting the sky with soft gold and pink. Everything looked peaceful, but his body trembled. His chest burned. Kalo pulled aside his torn tunic and froze. Carved into his skin were symbols he had never seen before, curved lines, sharp angles, and eyes within circles. They were dark, almost black, yet they seemed alive. With each heartbeat, they pulsed faintly, warm and heavy. He staggered back toward Zangoma village. As he walked, the world felt wrong. The air whispered even when there was no wind. Shadows moved a second longer than they should. He heard footsteps behind him, but when he turned, no one was there. At the village edge, women fetching water screamed when they saw him. "Spirits!" one cried, dropping her clay pot. Children ran. Dogs whimpered and hid. Kalo's presence made the air feel thick and cold. When he stepped onto the dusty ground of the village, drums fell silent. Conversations died. Queen Nayira came forward, her tall figure wrapped in deep blue cloth. Her eyes went straight to Kalo's chest. "The mark," she whispered. "The spirits have judged you." Elder Mbala approached slowly. He studied the symbols with sorrow, not anger. "You were chosen," he said. "Not blessed, not cursed, chosen." Kalo fell to his knees. "I didn't mean to break the law. I only wanted to help." The elder lifted his staff and pointed toward the forest. "The spirits do not care about intention. They care about balance." That night, Kalo could not sleep. The mark burned when he closed his eyes. He dreamed of walking on a thin line between light and shadow. On one side, the village laughed and lived. On the other, the forest breathed and watched. When he woke, he could hear voices. Soft, many, old. They spoke in languages he did not know, yet somehow understood. They showed him visions. Villages burned by greed, rivers dried by disrespect, kings falling because they refused to listen. The ancestors were teaching him. Days passed. Kalo stopped hunting. Animals avoided him. Instead, he began to see things others could not. He saw a dark cloud hanging over a child who would soon fall ill. He saw cracks forming in the river spirit's patience as fishermen took too much. People grew afraid. "He brings bad signs," some whispered. Others said, "He can warn us." The village divided. One evening, a hunter named Badu collapsed near the fire, foaming at the mouth. Kalo rushed forward, guided by a voice only he could hear. He pressed his marked hand to Badu's chest. The symbols glowed. A black mist poured out of the hunter's mouth and vanished. Badu lived. Fear turned into awe. But the spirits were still watching. That night, the ancestors spoke clearly. "You have seen," they said. "Now you must choose." The ground shook gently. The fire dimmed. "If you reject us, the village will suffer. If you accept us fully, you will no longer belong to the living world." Kalo's heart ached.
He looked at his people, his home, his mother's hut, the children playing in dust and laughter. "What must I do?" he asked. The answer came like thunder. "Face the source of imbalance. Return to the sacred forest, not as a hunter, but as a servant." Callow knew then. His punishment was not pain. It was responsibility. And the real trial had just begun.
The price of obedience. The village gathered before dawn. Firelight flickered across worried faces. The drums beat slowly, heavy with fear and hope mixed together. Kalo stood at the center, bare-chested, the spirit mark clear for all to see. The morning wind brushed against his skin, cold and warning. Queen Nayira raised her hand. "You will not walk alone," she said, though her eyes showed doubt. "But none may follow beyond the river." Kalo bowed his head. "If I return changed," he said. "If I do not, remember me kindly." His mother wept silently. His father placed a hand on his shoulder, firm and proud. "Listen, this time," he whispered. Kalo crossed the river again. The sacred forest welcomed him differently now. The trees leaned inward, not threatening, but watching. The air shimmered. He felt the spirits close, pressing against his thoughts. The ancestors guided him to a hidden valley where the ground was cracked and black. At its center lay a massive stone idol, broken and bleeding dark energy into the soil. This was the source of imbalance, a forgotten pact broken long ago by greedy kings. A roar echoed through the valley. From the shadows rose Mawira, a spirit beast shaped like a lion but formed of smoke and fire. Its eyes burned with rage and pain. "The living have forgotten respect," Mawira growled. "Why should I protect them?" Kalo stood trembling but did not run. "Because not all have forgotten," he said, "and because I am here to pay the price." The beast circled him. "What price?" "Whatever the ancestors demand." The ground shook. Visions filled Kalo's mind. Endless wandering, loneliness, watching generations pass without belonging. He understood. To heal the land, someone must remain between worlds forever. Mawira lowered its head, then choose. Kalo closed his eyes. He thought of laughter, warmth, simple days. He thought of his pride and how it led him here. "I choose balance," he said. The mark on his chest blazed white. Pain tore through him, but he did not scream. The broken idol began to mend. The dark energy faded. Green shoots pushed through dead soil. The forest sighed. Back in the village, the wind returned. Birds sang again. The river flowed clear. But Kalo did not return. At the forest edge, villagers sometimes saw a figure at dawn, half shadow, half light, watching silently. A guardian. A reminder. The wrath that rose. The balance did not break at once. For a time, Zangoma village breathed easily again. The river ran clear. Crops grew tall. Children laughed without fear of shadows. Many believed the spirits were satisfied. But ancient anger does not fade quickly. Far beyond the sacred forest, past the mountains where clouds slept on stone, a wrong was awakening. Greedy men from another land had heard whispers, stories of a forest filled with power, guarded by fear alone. They did not believe in ancestors. They believed only in taking. One night, the earth groaned. Gallo felt it instantly. He stood at the edge of the forest, half man, half spirit, his form shimmering like heat above dry ground. The mark on his chest burned hotter than ever before. The ancestors whispered urgently now, their voices sharp with warning. "They come," they said, "those who do not listen." Smoke rose on the far horizon. Raiders entered the outer lands with iron weapons and fire. They cut trees without prayer. They killed animals without thanks. Their leader, a tall man with cruel eyes, laughed as his men marched forward. "Spirits are stories," he said, "and stories burn." The sacred forest shook. Mawira roared, a sound that split the night sky. Trees bent, birds fled. The ancient spirits gathered, but something was wrong. Their power alone could not stop men who felt no fear. Balance demanded a bridge. Balance demanded Kalo. He stepped fully into the living world for the first time since his choice. Pain ripped through him as flesh and spirit pulled together. Blood ran from his nose. His legs shook, but he stood. Queen Nayira saw him first. "Kalo," she breathed, "you returned." "For a moment only," he said softly. His voice carried wind and fire together. "Call the people. They must not fight this battle with spears alone." Drums thundered across the land. Villagers gathered, terror in their eyes as the raiders approached. Firelight reflected on iron blades. The smell of smoke and fear filled the air. Kalo walked forward alone. The raider leader laughed when he saw him. "One man?" he mocked. Kalo raised his marked hand. The forest answered. Roots burst from the ground, twisting around invaders' legs. Wind howled like 1,000 ancestors shouting at once. Shadows rose and fell like waves. The raiders screamed as visions filled their minds. Visions of judgment, of forgotten laws, of lands destroyed by arrogance. Still, some pushed forward. The leader raised his blade and charged. Kalo met him halfway. When iron touched the mark, light exploded. The sound was like the sky breaking. The ground split, and a wall of spirit fire rose between forest and village. The raiders were thrown back, their courage crushed under ancient fear. The leader fell to his knees, shaking. "Mercy," he begged. Kalo looked down at him, eyes glowing softly. "Remember," he said, "and teach others to remember." The fire vanished. The raiders fled into the night, leaving their weapons behind. The village was saved. But Kalo was falling. The effort tore him apart. His body flickered, edges fading like smoke. Queen Nayira rushed forward, but could not touch him. Her hand passed through his arm like mist. "You cannot stay," she said, tears shining. "I was never meant to," Kalo replied gently. The ancestors called him back, their voices firm but proud. Kalo turned once more toward the people. "Teach your children the laws," he said, "not with fear, but with respect." Then the wind carried him away. The forest closed. Silence returned. But everyone knew this was not the end. The law that lives forever. The night after the battle was quiet in Zangoma village. Too quiet. No one danced. No one sang. The fires burned low, and the drums rested, covered in ash. The people sat together, listening to the soft wind move through the grass, each person holding the same thought in their heart. Kalo was gone. At dawn, Queen Nayira walked alone to the river. The water reflected the pale sky, calm and clear. She knelt and touched the surface. For a moment, the ripples formed a shape, symbols like those once carved on Kalo's chest, then faded. Elder Mbala joined her. His voice was tired but steady. "The ancestors have accepted the price," he said. balance stands. From that day on, life continued, but it was not the same. The sacred forest was no longer feared blindly, but it was deeply respected. Before hunters entered the outer edges, they prayed. Before trees were cut, elders poured libation into the soil. Children were taught not just the law, but why the law existed. At times, travelers passing near the forest spoke of a figure seen at sunrise or sunset, a man-shaped shadow standing where the trees met the open land. Some said he glowed faintly, others said the wind bowed around him. When danger came too close, animals fled early, storms turned away, fire refused to spread. The people knew. Callow had become the watcher between worlds. Years passed, children grew into elders. Queen Neaira's hair turned silver. Elder Mabala was buried beneath a baobab tree, drums playing softly as the ancestors were called to guide him home. During the burial, the wind rose suddenly. The leaves shook. For a brief moment, the spirit mark appeared in the air, glowing like a quiet star. No one spoke. They did not need to. The story of Callow was told to every new generation, not as a tale of punishment, but as a lesson of listening. Elders reminded the young that strength without respect leads to ruin, and courage without wisdom invites destruction. And they always ended the story the same way. The spirits are not our enemies, they would say. They are the memory of the land. Moral lesson. When humans place pride above tradition and ignore sacred laws, balance is broken. True strength comes not from defying ancient wisdom, but from respecting it. Those who listen to the past protect the future. Far within the sacred forest, the wind moved gently through the trees. And somewhere between the living and the ancestors, Callow stood watch. The law lived on.